Our topic today is death and dying. Officially, it's called Thanatology. It's not as depressing as you might think. It's a study of the reality of hope in death and choices and mourning and reaffirmation. A very large spectrum, really. If you want to study how brain chemicals interact and neurons as someone approaches death, you would be looking into what's known as neuroscience. You could pause here if you want to read this a little further. But if you want to get into medicine and to study the breakdown and various disorders, treatment of illnesses and so forth, then you look into neurology. Have this up here for you. And if you want to study why do people behave the way they do, then clearly that would be psychology. And finally, if you want to understand why humans interact and connect to a higher power, particularly dealing with death and dying, then you'd want to look into religion or the area of faith. Okay? And in the field of death and dying, thanatology, it's a combination of all the above. There was someone known as, I'll bring her image up, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She did groundbreaking work in Chicago, working in hospitals with dying children, and compassionately learned so much about the death process. And she famously helped us understand the 5 stages of grief. They're listed here: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, not always in that order. And that would apply to the dying patient, but also to those dying who are grieving with the dying person. So, come back on here. The dying process is not always a pleasant one. Though some and many do experience a serene type of passing. In the case of a serious illness, there can be a gradual breakdown of the body, of course, and in that process we lose basically everything that's near and dear to us. Certainly our health, our natural bodily beauty, that goes, our dignity as well, and sometimes even our mind will leave us. And dying can be, of course, then a very humbling experience. Especially because we live in a death-denying culture. We really do. And media rewards beauty and youth. We all know that. And as we age, there are beauty products that try to cover up the effects of father time and aging. And our childhood dies off first, right? And then followed by our youth. And that leaves us. And then we have our young adulthood. And eventually we enter into middle age. And there's a kind of reckoning there. Bring up an image for that. You'll love this. We've all said it. 50 is the new 25. Well, it's clever, but we desperately need to fight against nature itself. Should we? Well, we seldom go toward dying gracefully. I think it was Mae West who said this: getting old is not for the faint of heart. Well, she's right. And we break down and we ache and we lose our vitality. And we sometimes suffer greatly. But we can adapt, and we can use the gift of wisdom and that we acquire in the aging process itself to adjust and find new joy as we age and move toward our dying process. We have to do this. And so how is the process of dying calibrated to help ease the grip on this world and more gracefully move on to the next world? Well, I'll bring up an image. It's not a pleasant one, but the deathbed can happen at home or in an institution. But dying can be and should be a natural process, and the human body actually knows how to die. In our next video, we're going to hear from professionals in the field of death and dying as to the process and the stages of death. And in later videos, we're going to benefit from the hospice professionals that describe the transition process and how to make it more comforting for the family, but especially the one passing on. And to complete the journey, we're going to examine NDEs, known as near-death experiences, and what we can learn from them as well. Thank you for listening.